Appomattox Courthouse National Historic Park. So what happened here is that Lee surrendered to General Grant in this house right behind me, in Mr. McLean's parlor. Ultimately, General Lee gets boxed in by Grant and the majority of his federal forces. He's blocked off in all the cardinal directions, and he has no choice but to surrender. He's forced to, he can't get out. And Grant has, for the past week and even before that, made sure that every step along the way, Lee couldn't escape and meet up with other Confederates in North Carolina. So effectively, this is the end of Lee's army, and the beginning of the end for the Confederacy as a whole, because Lee's army was kind of the pinnacle point of that. So once Lee surrenders, the army's gone, a lot of the other armies also surrender. So Grant asks General Lee to choose a spot in this village here to be the house of surrender, or a location where they can meet for the surrender to occur. So as the story goes, one of the first people that one of Lee's scouts sees when riding through the village is Mr. McLean. And they ask Mr. McLean, where can we have this surrender? He takes them to multiple buildings that no longer are standing, but Lee's scout deems them unnecessary or unfit for the surrender. So pretty comically, Mr. McLean gets fed up and he's like, all right, well, you could just use my parlor then, if just get this over with. And that is what happens. They like his parlor, they use his parlor, and that's how it just so happens to end up at the McLean house.
Can you describe like the involvement of the black soldiers on both sides?
So the federal Union colored troops that were here, they played a big role in the battle in blocking off those routes that Lee was trying to take to the south. So a lot of them were positioned in spots in those cardinal directions, like if he wanted to break back east, if he wanted to break south specifically, and west ultimately in this field that's going to be right in this direction. And those colored troops are placed there, multiple regiments that are here, and they play a large role in those battles of protecting those escape routes and helping to box Lee in. And on the Confederate side, although there weren't any actual black soldiers that we know of that were present here, there of course were many slaves that were being forced to be part of the Confederate ranks. And in the town as a whole, there were a lot of slaves here as well, all of which get their immediate freedom as soon as Lee surrenders to Grant. So here in Appomattox and in the National Park Service, we refer to April 9th, 1865 as Freedom Day for Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia, because of that.
And there was a slave quarter here.
Yes.
Can you kind of describe that?
Yeah, so actually right behind this house, Mr. McLean, he owned what we believe was about 8 or 9 slaves. So there's a slave quarters right behind his house. It's reconstructed by the National Park Service. And that's where his slaves would have been. They were not agricultural slaves. He used them as domestic workers around his house. But of course, even them being here, they were immediately freed as well. So their future, as well with other slaves in the area and in this town, were on the line, because of course they were freed, and that's a fantastic, amazing thing. But at the same time, they have opposition from former Confederates. They have to work for their own land now. They have to find their own jobs. So that was, of course, a struggle within itself.